just stop. Here's Ross, the host with today's dose of common sense.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Good to see you. Been out of town, so didn't do any podcasting or anything. I took a little vacation, a well-deserved, much-needed vacation. But I'm back, and I took recording equipment with me in case I wanted to do some sort of on-the-road podcast or something, but I just didn't get around to it. I didn't feel like it. So all I did was relax and, do our thing. That was it. So no recording for anyone. But so much has been going on since we last spoke, so I thought I would touch on some of it today. Of course, everyone is talking about Iran and our attack on Iran, the United States, us. Attack on the Iranian nuclear facilities. There were 3 of them that were struck. And, depending on which side of the political spectrum you're on, it was either the most brilliant military strike in all of history, or it's the prelude to World War III and the end of the world and stuff. It's neither one, actually. It was just a simple strike. But the one question that people are having is how much damage did it actually do? Because those things, that especially the, I forget the one that's deep underground. I forget the name of it now. It's so far underground, they weren't sure that the bunker busters would go deep enough to hit it. So there's pictures out on the internet already, satellite images, and it does show that there were 3 bunker busters that were dropped on this one location. I'm assuming that's going to be the one that was the deepest down. But there's not really going to be any way for anyone to tell what the damage was, because you can't really do a battle damage assessment, a BDA, in Iran. You would have to actually go there and go to the place and go underground and see what you blew up and what you didn't, and that's not going to happen. So the Iranians aren't going to tell us exactly what was destroyed and how effective it was. They're going to say, oh, everything's fine. You barely just scratched the surface and all that stuff, and they'll continue doing what they're doing. Or it may have collapsed the entire facility underground, and either way, we're never going to know that. But the one question that remains is that we apparently did not attack the enriched uranium that they have stockpiled. So it's still there, which means they still have the material needed to make a nuclear bomb or several nuclear bombs. But how long it will take them to get their facilities back up and running so that they can continue to build them is the question. We may have set them back a decade, 20 years, or just 5 or maybe 6 months. We're never going to know until they decide to nuke somebody, I guess, or we have better intel on the ground, which is one of the questions that came up, was what kind of intelligence we had, because poor Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, just not too long ago was saying that there was no evidence to show that Iran was actually building a nuclear bomb. And then we bombed them anyway. And, Trump came out and said, hey, no, she's wrong. She's wrong. Your director of national intelligence, who gets the information from the intelligence agencies, is wrong. And I would like to know who told him that. Because if your director of national intelligence doesn't have access to the intelligence that would make her think that Iran needs to be bombed, and, Pete Hegseth does, so you're going to go with him. That's a little weird. I'm not sure how this whole decision-making process came about, is what I'm trying to say. So we don't know what's going to happen with Tulsi, other than, she's going to continue to be a sycophantic worshiper of Trump and, do her thing. And she's probably going to get fired eventually. They'll all get fired eventually, by the way. We saw the same thing happen in the first administration of Trump back in 2016 to 2020, because, everybody he hired who he said were the best of the best, he wound up firing them all anyway. So I would expect that Tulsi Gabbard might be looking for a job sometime soon, especially if she doesn't figure out a way to say that, no, I didn't actually say that. What I meant was, to Trump's satisfaction. And I don't know. I don't know if he'll buy it or not. And maybe Laura Loomer will go there and tell him that she's no good. But in the news, if you're watching on the video, just pulling up the screen share here, and I just thought this was a funny headline from the National Interest. The B-2 nuclear bomber is practicing how to penetrate contested airspace. That was from 7 days ago. That's literally why the B-2 stealth bomber was invented, was to penetrate contested airspace. So I don't understand where people come up with this stuff like, this is groundbreaking. No, that's why we made that airplane in the first place, was to penetrate contested airspace undetected. Anyway, I continue to be shocked at some of the things that I read online every day. But the one with the enriched uranium, was the Isfahan? Where is it? I'll have to find it in here. I think it was the Isfahan facility is the one that has all the stored uranium. Probably not all the stored uranium, but we know that there is refined uranium stored there. So we don't know if that's going to leave them with to continue to be a threat, or if we'll get it straightened out through negotiations. I suppose we could talk to them and say, hey, if you guys are nice and just stop trying to build bombs and stuff, we'll help you refine your uranium so that you can have nuclear power and stuff like that. I don't trust the ability to negotiate. This administration hasn't shown that they're very good at that, because if they were, they could have prevented this whole thing in the first place. Trump was the one who took us out of the nuclear agreement with Iran. He's the one who backed out of that so that we could no longer inspect their facilities and couldn't keep track of them and all of that. And the whole cooperative relationship that we were trying to build was destroyed. And so now he's having to clean up his own mess. And hopefully he won't kick off a larger conflict, which it probably won't. I know a lot of people really, really worry about those things. And Iran doesn't have the capability of going to war with us. I mean, they could try, I guess. They could launch some airplanes and some boats. But they simply do not have the military capability to fight us. So their only tool that they have is the same tool they've been using since 1979, which is terrorism. They support terrorist groups all over the world. They have their own terrorists who go around and do different things. They've always been a state sponsor of terrorism ever since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. They helped kill American soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan by sending fighters and bomb-making experts to teach them how to build explosively formed penetrators, which were bombs that were designed to defeat the armor on the side of our armored vehicles so that they could kill more troops with roadside bombs. That was Iran's doing. And they've been up to a whole bunch of other things. There's been a lot of back and forth between us and Iran over the years. You might remember the USS Vincennes. If I remember, the USS Vincennes incident where we shot down an Iranian airliner. That back in the 80s when we were having a conflict there because Iran was trying to prevent us from getting our oil from Kuwait, I think it was. So we went over there and put U.S. flags on the ships so that everyone would know this is a U.S. flagged ship now. If you attack it, you're attacking us. And we blew up a bunch of stuff. We sunk a bunch of their boats and shot down some of their planes, I think, if I remember correctly. But they were involved in numerous terrorist incidents against the United States, from everything from the Marine barracks in Beirut to they even blew up the car of the wife of the captain of the USS Vincennes in Los Angeles. There was so many things. There's a lot of stuff that they've been up to as far as bad things go. We should have. All right, here's the bottom line. We should have done this a long time ago. We shouldn't have waited this long because now we don't know how far along they were. But or we might. Let me back up a step. We may actually know how far along they are. We may have intelligence that's that good. We may have human sources in the Iranian regime, or in their scientific, academies, or somewhere, or someone working on it, or Israeli spies, whoever it may be that we're getting information from. We might know exactly how far along they were, and they may have hit the tipping point where it was like, all right, now we just have to bomb them because they're not going to, abide by these rules that we tried to set for them. But I'm assuming we don't. We don't have that level of intelligence on the ground there. We have extraordinary capabilities when it comes to intelligence, but our human capability in those regions of the world are pretty poor. And it's hard for us to penetrate that sort of regime, just like North Korea. It's very hard for us to penetrate that, just like it was hard for us to penetrate Russia and the Soviet Union, because it's a denied area. You can't just go, hey, I'm going to move to Iran and be a spy and watch their nuclear program. It's not that simple. So there's a lot involved, and there are ways to do it. And I'm sure that we've been using all of those ways. But that's the question I would have, was what level of confidence did you have in the intelligence before you kicked this off? But as far as Iran doing anything in return, they don't have anything they can do. They can shoot rockets at U.S. facilities. They've done that already because they're supporting a bunch of the terrorist groups in Iraq, and they've been shooting rockets at U.S. Installations there for years. So they can continue doing that. They can, support some more terrorist acts, around the world. They can try to harass our oil shipments going through the Strait of Hormuz. They can block the Strait of Hormuz and try to prevent oil from leaving that region, which would be funny, to be honest, because if they thought they got bombed this time, wait till you cut off the supply of oil to everyone on Earth. And it wouldn't just be us who responded with that. But as far as surgical strikes go, this is what that was. We attacked very specific things with very specific weapons, specifically designed for these very specific types of targets. We didn't bomb a city. We didn't, carpet bomb Tehran or anything like that. We didn't indiscriminately fire a bunch of rockets and cruise missiles into cities around there. We attacked nuclear facilities that we knew were involved in the creation of nuclear bombs. So it was what they would call a surgical strike. But with what's been going on between Israel and Iran, it was kind of inevitable, I guess, because Israel had complete air superiority over Iran. So Iran didn't have really anything else it could do other than launch rockets or anything. And I think the possibility exists that they thought that Iran might get desperate enough that it may try to use some sort of rudimentary nuclear bomb that they may have developed, or maybe they're rushing to develop right now because they want to use it on Israel. They've already said for decades that they want to destroy Israel. So it's what the intelligence was is the question, and we're not going to know what that is. It'll be decades before any of that stuff gets declassified, unless they just decide that they're going to, put it all out there, which would be dumb. But the DNI didn't know anything about it. Apparently, the Gang of Eight, the top senators and people in Congress from both sides of the aisle who are normally kept abreast of these things, they didn't tell the Democrat leaders in Congress what was going on. They didn't give them a heads up or anything. And it's kind of bad form, I would say. Even if they weren't going to agree with you, there's nothing they could have done to stop it anyway. But I guess they clamped down on Pete Hegseth's Signal chat groups because nobody leaked it out. No reporters were sent the battle plans or anything like that. But they're talking about how brilliant it was that they sent some bombers and stuff in this direction, and the attack went from the other direction. And dude, people have been showing us pictures of those stealth bombers sitting over there for weeks now. They've been in place over there for weeks, and they've been, oh, gee, I wonder, it looks like we're getting ready to strike Iran. And I don't know. But they think they're brilliant. strategists, I guess. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. It's nothing good's going to come of it, other than maybe we set them back on their nuclear program. Maybe we didn't, but it is going to increase the threat of terrorism around the world, globally, and especially against us, and probably right here at home. So we're going to have to keep our powder dry, as they say, for a while. But one of the other issues a friend of mine sent me. Now, we've talked about UAPs a lot, UFOs, UAP. So you've heard my spiel about it. These people are saying classified aircraft or misidentifying known craft and things like that. That's what almost all of them are. That, yeah, there's going to be a handful that can't be identified properly, but that's just because it's what Mick West calls the LIZ, the LIZ, the low information zone, where there's literally nothing. It's just a light in the sky, and it's it's 4 seconds of video of a light in the sky. There's no way in hell to figure out what it is, and put it out there and say we definitively solved this mystery. So there's always going to be some that just don't get solved. But when you can get enough information, the date, location, angle, the time of the day, all these other things, when you can gather more information, a lot of these supposed UFO sightings are solved as being normal, mundane things. It's an airplane. Like Lou Elizondo had this mystery thing flying across. It was flying through to an airport. It was an airplane that he can see from his backyard. And he filmed this plane from far enough away that all you could see it looked like a Tic Tac flying. But it was an airplane going to an airport that's 7 miles away from his house. And then probably dozens of planes fly that route every day. So you could probably put a camera up there any time of the day and go, ooh, look, a UFO. Because it's far enough away that you can't see everything on the plane. It just kind of looks like a Tic Tac. So, they don't want to put out that information because when people do gather the information, they were able to identify the mountain range behind that and go, oh, this is where that was. And, oh, look, this is the flight path for planes that are landing at this airport. So a lot of the times they don't want to put more information out there. They want it to remain a mystery, so they just don't tell you everything about it. But I believe we've mentioned once before that Tucker Carlson thinks that UFOs are demons. And hey, he's not the only one. There's a bunch of weirdos out there who think that UFOs are angels and demons. And this is, the spiritual war that's taking place around us. And, well, that's just the way it is. So, since we're talking about nuclear things, a friend of mine sent me this, a link to this, and I just can't go without sharing this. So let's give a listen to Tucker explaining nukes.
Yeah, no, I was on February 20th, 2023. I was attacked in my bed by a spiritual being and clawed and left bleeding and scarred. And do I understand what happened? No, of course I don't. I don't really understand anything, but that did happen to me. I don't care if people believe me or not. It did. And I think it was just a momentary glimpse of something that's happening at all times, which is, again, this war between forces that we can't see, not since we dropped the atomic bomb in Nagasaki, the second one in August of 1945, and decided that we were gods and the God himself no longer existed. Since then, we have been a secular society, and that's why we're now being destroyed, in my view. I care about this country and what happened to it after 1945, and it's a very clear demarcation line, and it seems obvious to me that nuclear weapons are demonic. There's no upside to them at all, and that anyone who claims otherwise is either ignorant or doing the bidding of the forces that created nuclear technology in the first place, which are not human forces, obviously. And let me just ask you this, which I've asked a million people at dinner parties, but never in public. What was the moment we can point to that nuclear technology was invented? We can point to Isaac Newton and say, what apple fell on his head? Or we can point to Albert Hoffman in his lab messing around with the, ergot bacteria. That's when LSD was made. I've never met a person who can isolate the moment where nuclear technology became known to man. And so where did it come from exactly? Oh,
Wow. Wow. Not only are UFOs demonic, nuclear weapons were created by demonic forces. The research and development of nuclear power, nuclear weapons, the whole nuclear fission thing is very well documented. We know exactly when it happened, who did it. They were initially they discovered radiation in the 1800s, and then in, I think it was 1938 or something, and I don't remember the guy's name, but I think it was in Germany, like he said. It was the guy who discovered fission, and everything grew from there. Power, nuclear weapons, bombs, energy, nuclear propulsion, which was a thing that they were experimenting with into the 50s, and I don't know if they still use it or not, but it was deemed kind of, too dangerous. But if you're a UFO buff, then you know who Stanton Friedman is, and Stanton Friedman was an actual nuclear physicist, and he was talking about in the 50s they were working on nuclear rocketry, nuclear propulsion, and they were able to get some magnificent thrust out of these things, and they were way more efficient, way more powerful. But I guess they nixed those because the government or whomever thought that it was just a stupid idea to be playing around with. We're going to fly on things that have a nuclear bomb in them, but it's not really a nuclear bomb. But so, or they discovered it and they figured it out, and that's what we're using all the time now. We just don't know it, which could explain some things. But anyhow, that's a whole history that's known, it's documented. I'm sure dozens of books have been written about it. But Tucker believes that not only are UFOs demons, but nuclear weapons are also demonic. They were developed and given to us by some sort of dark demonic forces. Later, he continues in that little rant of his to talk about how all of the wars since World War II that we've fought have been against Christians, and he's like, oh, remember when in the Balkans, when we intervened in the Balkans, those are Christians. Well, so what? They were massacring people. Who cares what religion they were? I'm pretty sure when we invaded Iraq, that wasn't like a predominantly Christian society there. Yeah, Christians did live there. And they were, my understanding is Saddam was very open. He didn't, really force, people to convert or anything. He was like, fine, whatever your religion is, that's cool. But there might have been thousands of Christians in Iraq out of the tens of millions of people who lived there. I don't remember what the population was of Iraq, but definitely Afghanistan, no, there's no Christians there. There may have been at one time, but not since the Taliban in 1996. No. They were all driven out, stoned, or beheaded, I'm sure. But, yeah, so, and, of course, Russia. He has to bring up Russia because he loves Russia. He's basically a traitor to the United States. He's just a lunatic. But he's crazy. And he's like, now we're fighting this war against Russia, this proxy war against Russia, and they're Christians. All right, well, you identify as a Christian, and you're not even a good person. So there are all sorts of people who identify as Christian who go around murdering people. There's an entire church that calls itself Christian that spent hundreds of years molesting young boys and then covering it up. There's an entire church that spent hundreds of years running orphanages and basically enslaving children and sometimes letting children die and just burying them in mass graves and things like that. And the people who slaughtered the Native Americans identified as Christians. And I'm sure Timothy McVeigh thought he was a Christian. And a lot of the people who are running the government right now, the United States government, claim to be Christians, and they're Christian nationalists, and they're fascists. So you can't say that it's a war against Christians if Christians are the bad ones. That doesn't mean all Christians are bad. Doesn't mean they're all good either. The whole point of Christianity was that they're all supposed to be good. If you read what Jesus, the person the whole religion is based on, told you to do, it was none of this. None of it. None of it. And especially not nuking people or just, we're going to start some more wars or whatever. That's not what it was. And like I said before, we're going to do this very dangerous thing, and we're going to have an episode about religion, specifically about modern Christianity. And we're going to talk about some very difficult things because it's another area that I've studied for decades. And I'm fairly learned about the whole topic. And but what I'm going to say isn't going to make a lot of people happy. But anyway, we won't do that right now. We're going to do that some other day. But that's how Iran, Trump, and nuclear demons became the topics of today's podcast. And now I have to try to go cleanse my brain somehow and figure out how I'm going to clear all this out so I can have a good day tomorrow. As I go back to work. Hooray, hooray. It's a hard thing to do, go back to work. There's another thing that I'm going to wind up tackling, and that's going to be Ian Carroll. Because I keep seeing Ian Carroll, and every time he opens his mouth, he's wrong about something. And it's getting to the point where I'm starting to believe that he's doing it on purpose, intentionally trying to mislead people. But there's something else going on with him that I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about it, but I think we will. But that'll be another day. So for now, I don't know, keep your nukes dry, and maybe you can go catch a flight with a demon on one of those UFOs. And, I don't know, don't get attacked in the middle of the night by demons. Don't go anywhere near Tucker Carlson, because demons will jump from person to person, they'll do that. And my upbringing, in our religion, all you have to do is take your mind off God for, 5 seconds, and a demon jumps right into you. It does. There's nothing you can do about it. If you stop reciting, scriptures in your head, a demon's just going to jump right in there. Then it's all downhill from there. Sorry, guys, but don't take your eyes off the prize. Okay, well, I'll talk to you guys next time. Behave yourselves, be safe, and happy hunting.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Really? Just Stop with your host, Ross. Make sure to like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss a dose of some common sense.